Politics and Government in the United States of America. Government does not mean Regeringen in the United States. Government in the U.S. is a general term for all levels and institutions that govern Americans. In the parliamentary system, which is the norm in Western Europe, the people elect government from a national assembly called Parliament. The top political leaders, the Prime Minister and his cabinet, are at all times responsible to this assembly. Parliamentarism reflects the way Europeans define democracy. The ultimate power must be in the hands of the elected majority. In the American system, however, the president is not directly responsible to Congress, who represent the people. Americans have traditionally answered that this is the only system that prevents dictatorship and mob rule. The U.S. system of government is a democracy organized as a federal republic. Federal means that states unite but keep control of their own affairs. Power is shared between the 50 states and the national government in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. A republic means a belief in a government without any classes of people privileged by birth, such as royalty, or occupation, such as religious leaders. A short history of U.S. government. Before 1770, many American colonists were loyal British subjects who celebrated their new king, George III. The colonies from present-day Maine to Georgia were English in character, although they had also been settled by Scots, Germans, Irish, Dutch, Swedes, and so on. The American colonists were heirs to the Magna Carta from the year 1215, a charter stating that no one is above the law, not even the king, and that no one can take away certain rights. So in 1763, when the king began to demand that the colonies share the cost of the 7 Years' War, the English colonists protested. The Boston Tea Party. Samuel Adams of Massachusetts wanted independence from Britain. In 1773, the powerful trading company in British India, the East India Company, was in a difficult financial situation and appealed to the British government. The company was granted a monopoly on all tea exported to the colonies. The colonists, however, boycotted the company's tea. Adams and his band of men disguised themselves as Mohawk Indians, boarded 3 British ships lying at anchor, and dumped the tea cargo into Boston Harbor. Parliament considered this an act of vandalism, and the harbor was shut down until all 340 crates of tea were paid for. On July 4, 1776, the colonists had had enough and demanded freedom with the Declaration of Independence, which was considered an act of treason by Great Britain. The War of Independence, or the American Revolutionary War between 1775 and 1783, resulted in what had been an unthinkable separation from England. The sole governing authority during the American Revolution between 1774 and 1789 was thus a body known as Congress. With no power to regulate commerce or levy taxes, and with little real power, this group defeated one of the greatest military powers of its day and invented a new political entity that became a sovereign, independent nation. They were labeled traitors by Great Britain. The new nation recognized a need for a constitution, yet the majority distrusted human nature. They preferred weak government, and the Articles of Confederation were thus based on this belief. However, the Articles proved to be too weak as they allowed each new state too much independence. It was agreed that some central authority was needed. For example, to allow Congress to levy taxes, to create an executive to enforce laws, to allow for a combined military to face foreign threats, and to provide a national court system. The much-needed changes were provided for in the United States Constitution. Unfortunately, the Constitution also had its weaknesses. It provided too much power to the central government and not enough to the individual. As a result, the Bill of Rights were added to the Constitution as its first 10 amendments, providing personal freedoms and limiting the power of central government. Here you see a simplified version of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Among them, freedom of speech and the right to bear arms. Today, there are 27 amendments to the Constitution of the United States. Here is a simplified picture of the Constitution of the United States of America with its 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial, with Congress and the House of Representatives and Senate, the executive with the President and the Vice President, and the judicial with the Supreme Court. A major tenet of the Constitution of the United States is the separation of powers. The legislative branch makes laws, in Norway lovgivende. The House of Representatives with 435 representatives, the Senate with 100 senators, and committees. In Norway, this would be Stortinget. The executive branch enforces, utøvende in Norway. The president is the head of state and government. The vice president is appointed by the president, and in Norway, this would be regjeringen. And the judicial branch, which judges and reviews laws, dømmende. The Supreme Court with 1 Chief Justice and 8 Associate Justices. There are state Supreme Courts as well. In Norway, we have Høyesterett and other courts. This table is a further illustration of the Constitution and shows not only the 3 branches of government stated in the Constitution, but also the 3 levels of government for each branch. At the federal level, there is the legislative branch with Congress that make laws and oversee the rest. At the executive, there is the president that enforces, and at the judicial, they judge cases and review laws. The federal government is responsible for national government, foreign policy, and war. At the state level, we have state legislature, the governor as the executive, and the state Supreme Courts and the state courts as the judicial. The state government is responsible for state government, licensing, such as marriages, doctors, and driver's licenses, roads, although not interstate highways, and universities. At the local level, the legislative branch is the town council, the executive branch is the mayor or the city manager, and the judicial is the local courts. The local government is responsible for local government, schools, not colleges, and traffic laws. In the U.S. Constitution, the separation of powers and the system of checks and balances is extremely important. The system of checks and balances in government was developed to ensure that no one branch of government would become too powerful. The framers of the U.S. Constitution built a system that divides power between the 3 branches of the U.S. government, legislative, executive, and judicial, and includes various limits and controls on the powers of each branch. James Madison Jr. from 1751 to 1836 was an American statesman and founding father who served as the 4th President of the United States from 1809 to 1817. He is hailed as the father of the Constitution for his pivotal role in drafting and promoting the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Examples of checks and balances: Congress can impeach a president and remove him from office. The president can nominate judges to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court can declare a presidential act unconstitutional. Electing Congress. Senators sit for 6 years each, and elections are held even-numbered years. The elections are staggered so that only 1/3 of the Senate are up for election each 2 years. There is no term limit. Elections for representatives in the House of Representatives are held every even-numbered year. All representatives are up for election, and they sit for 2 years. There is no term limit. Both Senate and House delegates are chosen in state primary elections. This is a simplified overview of the two major parties in the United States of America. The Democratic Party supports stronger federal government, government regulation, social welfare, government spending. The Republican Party supports states' rights and decentralization, conservative values such as abortion and gay marriages, free play to market economics. They are opposed to government regulation, and they want less government spending. Note, there are liberals and conservatives in both parties. In Democrat Andrew Jackson's 1828 presidential campaign, his opponents called him a jackass. Jackson used this on a poster to signify a strong-willed animal. After the loss of the White House to Democrats in 1877, a cartoon was published of a donkey trapping an elephant, an intelligent animal, but easily controlled. Republicans use the elephant to signify strength and dignity. The Republican Party is also called the Grand Old Party, or the GOP. Electing a president. A nomination is the way a party selects its candidates for office. Usually, there are several competing presidential candidates in each party. Elections are held every 4 years through primaries, which are statewide party elections of candidates, caucuses, which are party members only, meetings to apportion delegates, and a national convention in each party with their chosen candidates. The campaigns include debates, advertising, and massive media coverage. Each party has a national convention in July or August at which the presidential candidate chooses his or her running mate to be the vice president. The candidate will select a vice president as an attempt to strike a regional balance. The convention marks the official start of the presidential campaign, which lasts until early November, when the national election takes place. Note that the president is not elected from a majority in Congress, such as in Norway and the UK, but on his or her own merits in a separate election. Electing a president. The popular direct election is on the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November, based on the choice of candidate. In Norway, we have a direct election mainly based on party politics. Americans do not have a direct presidential election. According to the Constitution, they are merely voting for electors in each state who make the choice in December. Each state has the same number of electors as there are representatives and senators in Congress from each state, a total of 535 plus 3 from Washington, D.C. The electors make up an electoral college which carries out the formal election of the president and vice president in December. The key to success lies in winning the most populous states and swing states, which are uncertain. The only way to win electoral votes is to win the majority in each state. A candidate thus needs a majority of the 538 electoral votes to become President of the United States, and that number is 270. The system called first past the post, as in a horse the first horse that gets past the post wins, is an indirect election. If a candidate wins the majority in one state, he gets all the votes in that state. There is no proportional representation such as in Norway. For example, even though Donald Trump lost the popular vote in November against Hillary Clinton in 2016, he still won the election because he gained most of the Electoral College votes. Clinton had close to 3 million more popular votes than Trump. This is an example of American fear of democracy, fear of the mob. In Norway, we have proportional representation, which is why we have more than 2 parties in parliament. The Electoral College vote is on the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December, with official results on the 6th of January. Electing a president. Unfortunately, interest in elections is low. For example, a 55% voter turnout occurred in 2016. In midterm elections, every 2 years in Congress and 1/3 of the Senate is even lower at 40%. Norway has almost 80% voter turnout. Furthermore, personality in a presidential election is important. It's easier to sell an attractive candidate than an idea, and it is hard to find a common idea that will appeal to all. Party platforms are therefore very general. Here you see how the first past the post system with the electoral vote in December can actually choose a different winner. In 2016, Trump received 63 million of the popular vote. Clinton, however, received 65.9 million. However, Trump won by 304 to 227 electoral college votes. That's what happens with first past the post. If you win the majority in each state, you get all the votes. It is ironic that the modern presidency is exactly what the founding fathers of the American Revolution fought against. They wanted restrictive and informal government. Instead, the U.S. now has a very powerful president. Congress may allocate the money, but the president has great control over its use. The president also has great persuasive power, either as a threat or as a favor. Furthermore, modern presidents have developed additional techniques for building a direct dialogue with the American people, bypassing their elected representatives on Capitol Hill. For example, Obama as the first president to make use of social media, and Trump's particular use of Twitter. I hope this tutorial has been educational, and I encourage you to look at many of the links provided in the PowerPoint. If you have any questions, just let me know.